Why being in a relationship at 60 or 70 years old can be a big mistake. Stoicism. They say that after 60, life should slow down. But the truth is, it often gets more complicated. People tell you to find a partner so you won't be alone, that it's never too late to start over, that love can still rescue you. But no one warns you about what it might cost, the loss of your peace, your freedom, and in some cases, your dignity. At this age, mistakes aren't measured in wasted years anymore. They're measured in how much peace of mind you lose, and peace is something that rarely returns once it's been given away. My name is Gabriel. For more than 15 years, I've studied and practiced Stoicism as a way of life, guiding people from different countries who, like you, want to live with wisdom, with virtue, and with courage. And over these years, I've seen the same pattern again and again. Many choices later in life are made out of fear of loneliness rather than out of self-respect. That difference, fear versus clarity, is what separates a calm old age from a bitter one. I want to share with you lessons that will help you see why jumping into a relationship at 60 or 70 can be dangerous if you haven't first protected your inner peace, your boundaries, and your purpose. This isn't about romantic fantasies. It's about real issues: money, health, adult children, sexuality, loneliness, and freedom. And maybe, just maybe, what you hear today will give you the courage to choose differently. I once met a retired woman who had remarried at 65. Her greatest fear was loneliness, and she believed a new partner would be the answer. At first it felt comforting, like she had filled an empty space. But little by little things began to change. He criticized her cooking. He pushed his routines onto her. He occupied her time and her home until the silence she had once loved was gone. What she thought would give her safety ended up costing her the freedom she valued most. When she finally separated again, she carried more scars and less trust. It made her realize too late that peace had been the most valuable thing she had. That's the strange truth of this age. Many people search for companionship, but in the process they give away what took them decades to build: the serenity of living at their own pace. Love may be beautiful, but it cannot pay the price of calm. You can't control another person's moods, habits, or family. You can only control your own mind. And if you invite someone into your life who brings chaos, that control begins to slip away. I learned something similar one quiet Sunday years ago. I woke up with no plans, no one at home, and at first the silence felt heavy. I caught myself thinking, how strange to be so alone today. But as the hours passed, the feeling changed. I cooked the meal I liked without having to negotiate with anyone. I put on music that was mine alone. I opened a book that had been waiting for months. By the end of the day, what had started as discomfort had turned into something else entirely: freedom. I realized then that solitude, when chosen, isn't punishment. It's a gift. The problem is that many people never learn to make peace with solitude. They carry a hidden emptiness, and when they enter a relationship, they unknowingly hand that emptiness to the other person, demanding, "Fill me. Make me happy." But no one can carry a weight that heavy, and instead of love, what grows is resentment. Being alone doesn't hurt. What hurts are the stories we tell ourselves about being alone. No one loves me. I must be useless now. I've failed. But those are just beliefs, not truths. Solitude can be nourishing, even sacred, if you see it differently. And then, of course, there is money, the silent test that reveals the truth of a relationship. At this stage of life, finances are not just numbers. They are symbols of dignity, security, and respect. I remember a man, 72 years old, who told me his story during a workshop. He had begun dating a widow from his neighborhood. Everything seemed fine until she suggested they merge their accounts. Out of trust, he agreed. Within months, his savings disappeared into expenses he neither enjoyed nor approved of. They eventually separated, and he told me words I'll never forget. It wasn't losing the money that hurt. It was losing it in exchange for mistrust. That is why money matters so deeply. Left unspoken, it festers until suspicion poisons love. People are quick to say, "We'll figure it out, love will take care of it." But love does not pay bills, nor does it erase mistrust. Healthy love doesn't need secrecy. It doesn't hide numbers. It doesn't use money as a weapon. And when agreements are clear, the heart rests. These stories, both mine and others I've witnessed, all point to the same truth. In later life, peace is priceless. Solitude is not failure. And money, whether you like it or not, defines the rules of any relationship. Ignore these truths, and the cost will be your serenity. But honor them, and you'll find the kind of freedom that no companionship can replace. People often assume that if you truly love someone, you must live under the same roof. But who invented that rule? As if love could be measured by how many square meters you share. At 60 or 70, when you already have your routines, your habits, even your favorite chair, living together can feel less like romance and more like constant friction. I've seen couples whose relationships survived and even flourished because they didn't live together. Each had their own home, their own space, and they visited when they wanted. There were no fights about clutter, no battles over the TV volume at night, no surprise drop-ins from children or grandchildren. This way of loving, sometimes called living apart together, is becoming more common among older adults, though many stay quiet about it because they fear judgment. I'll share a story that taught me a lot. She was 70, he was 68. They had both lived long enough to know what gave them peace and what disturbed it. She loved quiet mornings, sipping her coffee in silence. For her, silence was sacred. He was the opposite. The moment he woke up, he needed music, loud, lively, as if it were fuel for his spirit. Their rhythms clashed. She liked early nights with a book or a prayer. He came alive at midnight, when the world was still and inspiration arrived. They tried living under the same roof, believing love would be enough to bridge the gap. But it wasn't. Small arguments began. Tense silences. Disappointed looks. Slowly, what was meant to bring them together nearly broke them apart. Then one day, with more wisdom than fear, they chose something unusual. They each returned to their own homes. Not out of lack of love, but out of respect for who they were. From that moment on, they met each other like two people meeting life itself, with expectation, with joy, with gratitude. No more daily clashes, just appreciation for the time they chose to share. Their love actually deepened the moment they stopped forcing themselves into the same space. They discovered that sometimes love is not about closeness, but about giving each other room to breathe. Freedom, they realized, can also be tenderness. This is why, before making that decision, it's worth asking yourself some very practical questions. Are your sleep schedules compatible? Can you handle each other's habits, whether messy or meticulous? How will you deal with visits from children or grandchildren or even pets? These things may seem small, but in everyday life, they become mountains. If you're unsure, try a 30-day experiment. Live together as a trial, like test driving a car. Not to prove love, but to see if your peace survives daily life with that person. Because infatuation can last through dinners and short trips, but everyday life requires patience and true compatibility. Stoicism reminds us not to confuse what is necessary with what is optional. Loving someone does not mean sacrificing your routines, your space, or your independence. Love can exist closely or at a respectful distance. So don't let social pressure trick you into believing that true love always means sharing the same roof. Real love is finding the form that protects both your peace and theirs. At this age, the greatest luxury isn't a shared house, it's the freedom to decide how you want to live love. And this freedom brings us to another important truth, the importance of boundaries. Many people make the mistake of thinking that later in life, boundaries are no longer needed, that at this age, things should be obvious, and there's no need to spell them out. But the truth is, the older we are, the clearer boundaries must be. Because by now, we've learned the hard way that what isn't said in time will eventually cost dearly. Boundaries aren't about building walls. They're more like doors that protect what matters most: your time, your energy, your health, your space, your routines. Without them, small annoyances turn into real problems. Unexpected visits, disagreements over money, interference from children or grandchildren, or endless calls that steal your rest. I once witnessed a simple but powerful example during a workshop in Mexico City. An older woman said, "I need my mornings in silence to read the Bible." But he talks from the moment he wakes up. And her partner replied, "I feel like if I don't talk to her, she doesn't love me." Neither of them was wrong. What they lacked was a clear boundary. It was enough for her to say, "My morning quiet time is sacred. After that, we can talk as much as you like." Suddenly, both could breathe. The conflict melted away. To make it easy, imagine boundaries like a traffic light. Green means flexible, things you can let go without feeling invaded, like picking a movie or changing weekend plans. Yellow means negotiable, like how often you visit each other or how often you call. Red means non-negotiable, your sleep, your money, your privacy, your personal goals. The mistake is waiting too long to set those red lines. If you only bring them up after they've been crossed, the other person feels betrayed. This is where Stoicism teaches temperance, calm strength, saying no firmly but without anger. Boundaries are not rejection. They are acts of self-respect. Someone who truly values you won't be offended by your boundaries. They'll be grateful for the clarity. The ones who resist them are often the ones who don't care about your peace, only about their own convenience. So say it clearly from the beginning. This yes, this no, this we'll discuss. Don't see it as harshness. See it as love for yourself and a guide for the other person to love you better. Because a relationship without boundaries is like a river that has overflowed its banks. It destroys everything in its path. But with boundaries, the same river flows with strength, giving life instead of chaos. And yet, even with space and boundaries, there is another hidden danger: unfinished grief. Many people think the past no longer matters, that it's behind them. But what isn't healed doesn't stay behind. It follows. Old wounds from divorce, widowhood, betrayal, or even dreams that never came true creep into new relationships like shadows. And sooner or later, those shadows speak. The first step is simple but powerful. Name what you feel. Don't hide it. Don't pretend it's gone. Recognize it. Then honor what happened, even if it was painful. Be thankful for what you learned from it. And finally, let go of what no longer helps you move forward. One of the best ways to do this is by writing a closure letter. This letter isn't for anyone else, it's for you. In it, you can tell the person from your past, or even your younger self, everything you never said. Then, with dignity, you say goodbye. I had to do this myself after a relationship that marked me deeply in my youth. Even years later, I realized I was still carrying anger and unanswered questions. So one night, I sat down to write. It wasn't just a note. It became pages and pages. I cried. I laughed. I felt angry all over again. But when I finished, I felt a huge relief, as if I had finally closed a chapter that had been left open too long. Now I want to ask you, what scar do you still touch when no one is watching? What memory still makes you cry or fills you with anger? Those are signs of grief that isn't fully healed. Don't judge yourself for it, but don't ignore it either. Because as long as it's open, it will steal your peace and follow you into any new relationship. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes that always moves me. There is a time for everything, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 4. Grief doesn't go away by denying it. It heals when you walk through it and give it its proper place in your memory. So before you open the door to a new partner, open the box of your past and put "Yef doesn't go away by denying it." It heals when you walk through it and give it its proper place in your memory. Things in order. It's not about forgetting, it's about releasing. Because only when you close those wounds with love and gratitude can you look at someone new with clear eyes, without shadows behind you. And believe me, there is no greater gift for yourself and for the other person than starting clean, free from invisible chains that pull you back to yesterday. Desire doesn't disappear with age, it changes. The mistake is trying to live it with the same rules you had at 20 or 30, comparing what's gone with what you think should still be there. That's when frustration and silence begin. Many people I've met feel uneasy about intimacy at this stage of life. Some worry their bodies are no longer attractive. Others think they must perform like they once did. But the truth is, mature desire has its own beauty. It's slower, more tender, more thoughtful. It's not about performance or numbers. It's about being fully present, without pressure, without masks. Years ago, I read a book on the psychology of aging. The author compared sexuality in old age to a fine wine. It no longer rushes because time has given it depth and richness. That image stayed with me. I realized that later in life, intimacy isn't about doing more, but about feeling better. This is where emotional intelligence matters most. Speak openly with your partner about fears, hopes, and limits. If you feel insecure about your body, say it. If you need a gentler pace, share it. If you want more tenderness than passion, admit it. What isn't spoken becomes a wall. And in intimacy, unspoken walls are heavier than wrinkles. I've also seen how freeing it is when people stop chasing the perfect sex life sold by society and instead create their own version of closeness. Sometimes it's a nap together in an embrace. Sometimes it's rediscovering the power of touch. Sometimes it's exploring new ways of intimacy that have nothing to do with youthful pressure. There's no single correct model. The right one is the one that makes you feel alive without guilt. Stoicism teaches temperance, not being dragged by excess, but not denying joy either. Mature sexuality doesn't need to prove anything, but it also doesn't have to repress the natural joy of being in a body. Desire is still vital energy, even if it takes a new form. So, ask yourself honestly, do you live your intimacy from freedom or from shame? The body changes, yes, but the ability to love, to touch, to enjoy closeness never fades. What changes is how you allow yourself to see it. Let go of impossible standards. Live your sexuality as something slow, intimate, and authentic. Because at this age, eroticism is no longer about impressing. It's about sharing who you are without fear. Do something today. If the gap between what you dream and what you live is too wide, it means your purpose is being neglected. A practical way to fix this is to make a 90-day plan for your personal project. It doesn't matter if it's something big or small. What matters is setting aside time for it, time that is non-negotiable. That time is not up for trade, not even for your partner. Because your purpose is the source of your energy and joy. You can share it with others, but you cannot give it away. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, during a relationship, I stopped reading deeply, the kind of reading that nourished my soul. Daily routines swallowed me, and little by little I lost my inner peace. When I reclaimed that habit, I felt alive again. That taught me something important. Purpose is not a luxury, it's a need. Especially in later life. If you choose to be in a relationship, the challenge is to respect each other's purpose. It's not a competition. It's walking side by side, each with your own project, sharing what enriches both. When your purpose fades, the relationship grows dull. But when both nurture it, the bond grows stronger. So look at yourself honestly. Are you moving in your own direction, or are you just orbiting around someone else? At this stage, the last thing you should lose is your sense of purpose. Without it, any relationship feels empty. With it, even solitude feels fruitful. Now, there's another danger you must learn to spot: manipulation. At 60 or 70, few things hurt more than realizing too late that someone was using you. Because mistakes at this age aren't measured in years, they're measured in lost peace, which you may never get back. And manipulation rarely arrives with noise. It sneaks in quietly, dressed as affection, care, or sweet words. Think of the warning signs: someone eager to rush into commitment as if time is running out. Someone who always plays the victim, making you feel guilty if you don't give in. Subtle jealousies disguised as, "I just care about you," but slowly cutting off your friendships and freedom. Or gaslighting, making you doubt your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. None of this is love. It's control. I remember a woman from Peru who told me her partner always said, "If you love me, you won't go out with your friends." At first, she took it as affection. But years later, she realized she was isolated, dependent, and afraid. Walking away was painful, but it gave her back a freedom she had forgotten. This is where Stoic prudence matters. The Stoics teach us to look at facts, not just words. So ask yourself, does what they say match what they do? Do they own their mistakes, or do they always blame others? When they hurt you, do they repair it, or just justify it? Here's a simple script. First, observe the fact, what was said or done. Then check for consistency. Do they act the same with others? Next, assess responsibility. Do they admit fault? Finally, look for repair. Do they make it right? If they fail all these steps, it's manipulation. Love never demands blindness. Healthy love invites clarity. If staying means closing your eyes and swallowing excuses, then what you hold is not love, it's fear. So ask yourself, do I feel freer and more at peace with this person, or more limited and confused? You already know the answer, even if it hurts. Better a short pain now than long suffering in the hands of someone who only wants control. True love doesn't fear your clarity. It celebrates it. Only a bond that survives truth is worth keeping. And then comes a subject most people avoid: legal and financial protection. It feels uncomfortable, but it shapes the peace of your later years. Love and trust are not enough. You need documents, agreements, and clarity. Without them, you're leaving your door wide open and hoping no one walks in. That's not trust. That's risk. I've seen families tore apart because inheritances weren't clear, because assets weren't separated, because there was no will. What started as love ended in lawsuits, resentment, and broken families. All of it could have been avoided with a few difficult conversations. Stoicism teaches foresight, not just to accept what life brings, but to prepare wisely. In this CA, here's a simple script. First, observe the fact, what was said or done. Then check for consistency. Do they act the same with others? Next, assess responsibility. Do they admit fault? Finally, look for repair. Do they make it right? If they fail all these steps, it's manipulation. Love never demands blindness. Healthy love invites clarity. If staying means closing your eyes and swallowing excuses, then what you hold is not love, it's fear. So ask yourself, do I feel freer and more at peace with this person, or more limited and confused? You already know the answer, even if it hurts. Better a short pain now than long suffering in the hands of someone who only wants control. True love doesn't fear your clarity. It celebrates it. Only a bond that survives truth is worth keeping. And then comes a subject most people avoid: legal and financial protection. It feels uncomfortable, but it shapes the peace of your later years. Love and trust are not enough. You need documents, agreements, and clarity. Without them, you're leaving your door wide open and hoping no one walks in. That's not trust. That's risk. I've seen families torn apart because inheritances weren't clear, because assets weren't separated, because there was no will. What started as love ended in lawsuits, resentment, and broken families. All of it could have been avoided with a few difficult conversations. SE, preparation means legal protection, an updated will, written agreements on cohabitation, clear division of assets, power of attorney in case of illness, and someone you trust to handle care if you cannot. These steps don't kill romance. They protect it. I once met a woman who remarried after being widowed. She never discussed wills or assets with her new husband. When he died, his children and hers fell into a legal war. It drained her emotionally and left her with little money. She told me, it wasn't the money that hurt. It was knowing the pain could have been avoided. I've also seen siblings stop speaking for life because their father left no will. That's when I promised myself I will leave my papers in order. Because no legacy is greater than peace among those you love. So don't see foresight as coldness. It's wisdom. Couples who respect each other talk about uncomfortable things before they turn into tragedies. True love doesn't fear clear agreements, it's grateful for them. Because only with trust and clarity can your heart truly rest without fear of tomorrow.